Post 101, under emergency.
Yes, I'm a U.S. Postal Service city carrier, and it seems to be a body in the street cut up. It looks like a body, the head coming off.
Looking for justice for the butchery that was performed on us.
About a body laying down in the street.
There was a mailman that was delivering the mail. Louisville police get a call from the mailman.
We weren't told it was being done. Our pelvis bone was cut, and the doctors didn't say what they were doing.
Pubic symphysis separation. Pubic symphysis, which is this, separation where it goes apart.
Welcoming once again here to Leinster House many of the women who suffered the barbaric act of symphysiotomy.
Make a small vertical scalpel incision above the lower part of the symphysis pubis.
She was screaming loudly and kind of hysterical.
That police believe picked up Jose Corona at the Walmart.
It's painful only when it's maybe sheared up or sheared down or a little forward or a little back. And then of course it's very painful when it's separated.
Cut the anterior fibers of the symphysis pubis with a sawing action from the top to the bottom of the joint.
He was a suspicious person, so he was very controlling of her.
And he was seeking some sort of solutions by going through this witch doctor.
I have a friend that makes requests from time to time. She came across how chainsaws were made and told me I had to look into it. I did, and this is going to be an interesting episode. This is also going to be a multi-storied one since information was pretty limited on what I could find. First, we'll hit on the unexpected origins of Leatherface's favorite lumber tool. Would you expect it to be birth? We'll also hit up another country that found them really swell to an overzealous degree. And following that are two horrible events in which the subject of today's video was used. One on themselves and the other by a jilted lover, a man still on the run. This one's for you, Haley. Rev 'em if you got 'em, and I'll be seeing you soon. Today we have cesarean sections for when a baby gets stuck. But what did they do before that? In 1770, French medical doctor Jean-René Segal came up with a solution from a very dark place. He was inspired by the writings of Séverin Penaud, a French surgeon from the late 1500s. He had described a diastasis of the pubis, or separating the symphysis of a hanged woman. And if you're wondering where that would be, right here. And in 1777, Segal got to test his method out. Madame Suchot was a 40-year-old woman who had a contracted pelvis due to rickets. No turkeys were shooting out of that oven. She had already lost 4 children, and any other currently known method would have killed her. This is where Segal cut right through her pubic joint to widen the canal. You know, really improve the ventilation in the room. Maybe hit the topiary while he's there. Ooh, a flamingo! And this was the first symphysiotomy. They began to catch on. Whether the baby happened to be doing a 360 or just happened to be a miniature NBA player, it didn't really matter. You were getting a symphysiotomy. And this, of course, was during a time when they performed it without anesthesia. So it's gonna hurt. This is where 2 Scottish physicians enter the picture with their flexible handsaw. It's 1780 and this is John Aitken and James Jeffray. And sorry, I'm not saying that weird. It's Jeffray. And speaking of, he got the idea when he was staring at a jointed chain in a watch and thought, man, that thing can really cut the fat. And so their saw was made of a fine serrated link chain with a teardrop shaped handle on both ends. One of the handles was removable so doctors could attach a blunt pointed needle to the end of the chain. The doctors used the needle to guide the chain behind the pubic joint in preparation for the symphysiotomy. The surgeon would then move their hands back and forth to saw through the pelvic bone faster than they could with a sharp knife and with greater precision. Italian obstetrician Leonardo Gili developed his own version known as the twisted wire saw. And if any of you have seen the audition, then I'm also getting nightmare flashbacks. Aitken and Jeffray believed it would lead to smaller wounds and just overall less harm. And while it did tend to go better than the usual knife methods, not all doctors were cut out for it. Sometimes they ended up doing more harm than good. But there was another doctor who thought that he could improve upon it. And in 1830, Bernhard Hein, belonging to a medical lineage, would invent the osteotome, or the bone saw.
I got you for 3 minutes.
It had sharp teeth connected to a chain and wrapped around what looks like an oversized butter knife. Hein's osteotome also had a hand crank that would cut through bone comparatively quickly, saving the patient from the blows of a hammer and chisel or the jarring motion of an amputation saw. Despite everyone wanting to run away when a doctor whipped this out, it was actually a success. Hein won an award and even got invited to Russia for a demonstration. It wouldn't be used for symphysiotomies though. Far too unwieldy for that. But amputations and craniotomies, it did just fine. Doctors caught wind of how well this thing sliced through bone, and it started being used to cut off diseased parts more efficiently. It only picked up further steam from there when Samuel L. Beans realized people stumps and tree stumps weren't too different and filed a patent for his endless chainsaw. But it would be Andreas Still in the early 1900s that invented the electric chainsaw that we all know and love today. And of course, he didn't have the stills to pay the bills. Thank you, I'll be here all night, folks. No, I'm gonna be here all night. Please let me out. Just let me out of here. But I would be remiss not to mention the innovation that happened in the early 2000s. Patrick Bateman would change sexual psychology forever by bringing the chainsaw into the boudoir. Sexy. Fortunately, in the Republic of Ireland between 1944 and 1987, they got a bit overzealous for these life-changing surgeries. It was estimated that around 1,500 women without any consent and without ever knowing had the procedure done on them. A 2012 report by Professor Irene Ann Gilson found that many of the victims had said the Catholic Church encourages, if not insisted upon, the symphysiotomies. It was suggested in another report that non-Catholic doctors would recommend sterilization of women after they had 3 cesarean sections. This involved removing the uterus and usually the cervix. After that, there would soon be prohibition on the sterilization. The Catholic doctors would recommend compassionate hysterectomies in response. That had to be said with hands clasped and a cheek-to-cheek evil smile. Matilda Behan survived this surgery. Hers was actually worse. She got a pubiotomy, which involves 2 cuts. A new procedure, they called it. Lucky her. She and her daughter set up an advocacy group in 2002 to bring awareness to this injustice. They alleged these surgeries were religiously motivated and performed against best medical practices. And in 2014, they brought the issue to the United Nations Committee Against Torture, who forced the Irish government into an investigation. And in 2016, they published that report. Ireland agreed to pay the women who received the procedure, but they would do it without admitting liability. They said the procedure was used rarely, and none of the women would suffer lifelong disabilities from it. Other doctors would disagree with that.
And then of course it's very painful when it's separated. That will create pain, weight bearing through your legs. So your hip bone is here, and that's your femur that's hitting the ground on both sides.
Neil Muelsnix of the Council for Europe would also disagree. I'm also sorry for butchering your name. He stated that he was particularly struck by the patronizing tone of the report and that it did not give acknowledgement to women's suffering and seemed to perpetuate some gender stereotypes against elderly women. The overall outcome is unfortunate, but I'm glad that they got some compensation for it, which can't be said about our next 2 stories. This one comes from the Journal of Forensic Sciences, Volume 53, Issue 5. And I haven't been able to access the full article, but only a description.
But oh boy.
Is it a description? But let me start with a question. If someone wanted to, well, you know, and they wanted to do it with a chainsaw, then how would they go about it? Especially without making it messy or prolonged. It seems like our next victim had a lot of time to think about it and put her engineering background to work. And I don't want to say that her plan was impressive, but she definitely had conviction. This was a 32-year-old woman who suffered from schizophrenia and major depression. She had also been in treatment for it for 10 years. Unfortunately, it ended up not being enough. She was found dead in her apartment where she lived alone. She had built a wooden structure containing plastic bags and pulleys. The chainsaw rested on the upper part of the structure on 2 horizontal boards. It sat between 2 vertical boards that would guide it down and help prevent aberrant motion. The bags and pulleys holding down the chainsaw would be cinched to the floor with nails. The chainsaw would be weighted down with filled water bottles. She would hit the command switch on the chainsaw, causing it to rev. It would cut through the horizontal boards and then onto her awaiting neck. The switch was still in her hand when her spinal cord had been sliced. The details in the article are on the autopsy, including the dry bone study to certify that she was responsible for her own death, which seems in line with her adverse past. And I gotta say, this is all a bit mind-blowing for me. All this takes so much thought and planning. To know how much she ruminated on this tragedy, it's hard to take. She didn't have any interest in power tools whatsoever. She specifically picked up skills just for the task. I'm guessing she had a real type A personality. I know people that would order DoorDash because they didn't want to go to the store, much less construct their own personal murder machine. Let this also be a lesson to check in on your loved ones. She obviously didn't have the support network, but there are others out there, especially now. It gets hard being caught in those cyclical patterns of thought. That negative cognitive triad just playing out over and over again. Just know that there is a sun above the weeds even if you can't see it. Which, easier said than done, I know, right? But now that Captain Buzzkill has ruined all of it, we'll get on to the next story. One that is both horrible and senseless, and one in which the murderer still remains at large. It's April 26, 2010 in Lewisville, Texas. The Lewisville Police Department received a call from a postal worker.
Yes, I'm in front of 1024 Shadowwood. I'm a U.S. Postal Service city carrier, and it seems to be a body in the street cut up.
He said that he could see a body laying in the street on the 1000 block of Shadow Lane. He was sure the body was mutilated.
It has a blue sheet wrapped around the bottom. It looks like it's a female, but it still has a bra on it. The head's to the side, the head's completely off the body.
He also advised he could see blood pulled near the front door and it was standing ajar. Officers were quickly dispatched. When they arrived, they saw a woman lying face down in the front yard with tattered pants and no shirt. Her head was located about a foot nearby. A trail of blood and hair between them. The trail would lead across the street to the neighbors. 2 chainsaws would be sitting on the tailgate of a pickup. One would still be running. Both would be covered in viscera. A woman, Carla, and her partner, Freddie, were standing by the body as the woman screamed, "That's my mom! That's my mom!" You can hear her chilling cries in the background of the 911 call.
I think the people who live here just got here.
They just got there?
This unfortunately was her mother, Maria Santos Corona. Freddie would say in sorrowed anger, "Jose did this." He would be correct. In fact, Jose had called and delivered this chilling line to Freddie. "I did it. I killed her. I'm dragging her body next door to the neighbor's yard." Jose Fernando Corona was the husband of Maria Corona. The couple lived with Maria and Jose in their house, and it seems that Jose had been suffering from mental breakdowns in the weeks prior, and this was compounded by the constant fights the couples were having. Carla told the police that her father had been seeing a witch doctor who told him that Maria was cheating on him, and it seems he was practicing rituals as police found paraphernalia related to witchcraft. Freddie had mentioned finding a red vial with a note in Jose's handwriting concealed under his sink. Dr. Howard Campbell at the University of Texas of El Paso says,
"Typically, these faith healer types use all kinds of potions, herbs, liquids. I think the color red, I think we can assume that's probably related to blood and perhaps imagery related to the heart and to love. The idea is that faith healers, they give you things that are going to heal and fix the problem."
This most likely being one of the many vials of perfume the witch gave to him, telling him that it would cast out the bad marriage spirits and bring in the good ones. As you may have guessed, it didn't work. Freddie was leaving to pick up he and Carla's daughter when Jose asked if Carla could go with him. Jose said he wanted to have a serious one-on-one talk with Maria about everything that had been going on. He put some money in Carla's pocket and told them to have lunch and take their time. Carla trusted her father and left with Freddie. Maria had been on the phone talking with a friend when she heard the noise coming from the backyard. She went to check on it, and that's when Jose attacked. This seemed fairly premeditated, as Jose had been up the night before testing out his chainsaws and making arrangements. He had even duct taped them to keep them running. And it seems like Jose was also still at the scene when the mailman arrived. He pointed out the body to the man and then took off soon afterward in a gold Sequoia owned by the family.
Yeah, he's the one that when I passed, he actually pointed out, "What's that over there?" And then I walked over and I realized that it was a body.
Jose then went to Walmart where he bought some clothes and other items and then took out money from the ATM. A Toyota truck then picks up Jose at the Walmart and brings him to a car dealership. Jose asked if he could bring a gold 1991 Ford Ranger for a test drive because he wanted to buy it. He never came back. They would catch pictures of Jose near Laredo in that same truck. and there's no confirmation of whether the vehicle actually crossed the border to Mexico. But that doesn't mean he didn't. They still haven't been able to locate him, and with no prior DNA evidence to link to him, it's made it that much harder. So he could still be in Laredo, or he could have crossed over to Mexico by foot. And if anyone has any info, then please call the Dallas Police Department or the U.S. Marshals. That's it, folks. From the horrid beginnings of our favorite Doom weapon to two twisted tales of tinny terror, the creativity of the human mind is an amazing thing, but it's also pretty terrifying when led down dark paths. A device that was once used to help save human lives, it would go on to be used for religious sterilization, one's own undoing, and a life being taken over by make-believe. The morality between these mountains are vast. But I gotta say, I still appreciate the old teethy electro knife all the same. But anyways, I hope you enjoy your own daydream sessions, and I hope you lie more on the side of John Aitken than Jose Corona. And take care, and don't worry, cause I'll always be watching.
Hey.